Okay, so I'm sure that many of you have questions about this, right? That there are probably a number of things that are unclear, that there are probably a number of things that you were a little bit confused about. So why don't we start there? What questions do you have about this before I go? Okay, yes, secrets. That was fast.
The stuff on the side where it says...
Okay, I'm glad you asked. Yes, I'm already prepared to answer that question. All right, so I have a handout for you. This is from the previous edition of the Norton Worldlit Anthology, which included a different version of the Sunjata epic. Because it's transmitted orally, different performers have different versions of the tale. The broad outlines of it are always the same, and there does seem to be a sort of official version that is performed by a family of bards that's connected with the Milanese royal family. But that particular version is only performed once every 7 years at a special festival, and no one's allowed to record it. So what we have here, right, the Namu saying in the margin of the version in your anthology is here translated. Right, so here's what I want you to do. I will read the lines of the poem, and you will read whatever is in parentheses, okay? All of you together. So, ready. Right. Nare Magan Konate, sorcerer seizing sorcerer. A man of power is hard to find, and 4 master singers.
Indeed.
Okala Jula Sangoi, sorcerer seizing sorcerer.
Mm-hmm.
It is of Adam that I sing, of Adam, Ben Adam.
True.
As you succeeded some, so shall you have successors. It is of Adam that I sing, of Adam.
Indeed.
I sing of Biri Biriba,
Indeed.
of Nare Magan Konate, sorcerer seizing sorcerer.
True.
From Fatia Taligara all the way to Sokoto,
Indeed.
belonged to Magan Sonjara.
Indeed.
Africans call that, my father, the Republic of Mali,
Indeed.
the Maninka realm.
True.
That's the meaning of Mali. Magan Sonjara, he slayed Bambara of the border. Settling on the border does not suit the weak.
Indeed.
And slayed Bambara the lizard. No weak one should call himself lizard.
Indeed.
And slayed Bambara of the backwoods. Settling the backwoods does not suit the weak.
Indeed.
All this by the hand of Nare Magan Konate, sorcerer seizing sorcerer. Simbon, lion born of the cat.
True.
Okay, so do we see now what these speeches, what the speech in the margin represents? What is that supposed to be?
Like a response?
Yeah, it's a response from the community listening to the story, right? What these oral epics are in West Africa, right? These are retellings of the history of particular ethnic groups, right? So this particular epic recounts the origins of an ethnic group called the Malinke. And their heartland is a region called the Manden. And the Manden covers more or less western Mali and eastern Guinea. And it was the center, sort of the heart of the Mali Empire of the that arose in West Africa in the Middle Ages. Right, it was the dominant political force in West Africa from about the 13th to the 16th centuries. Right, and Sunjata Kaita, about whom this epic is, I don't want to say written because it's not written, it's orally performed, about whom this epic was composed, was the founder of the Mali Empire. Right, the kings of Mali, the so-called Mansas, all trace their descent from him. So when you see that, indeed, 'tis true, right, in the margins, what this is the community participating in the retelling of their own history and affirming the things that the storyteller says. Right? Yep, you got that. Sure thing, buddy. Yes, this happened. Now, you will also sometimes encounter in the margins, they will say, I did not know that, or this is new to me, or something like that. Because each storyteller, as I said, has a slightly different version of the tale. But the broad outlines tend to be more or less the same. The same events usually happen in each version, right? It usually starts with a sort of prehistory, sometimes going back as far as the Genesis account of creation, sometimes discussing various servants and followers of the Prophet Muhammad and their actions in West Africa, but almost always describing the childless state, or the sonless state anyway, of Sunjata's father. The second element that's always present is the struggle between the Sharifu brothers and the Buffalo Woman. Now, we can all read footnotes, right? Do we know what Sharifu means? Pardon? Yeah, Sharifu are very, very important in Islamic cultures, right? When we talk about Sharifu, we're talking about people who are in the direct bloodline of the Prophet Muhammad, right? So Sharifu are descendants of the Prophet. Right. This is why when the brothers come to Donakiri, for example, the head of the village doesn't really want them to go fight the buffalo because he's worried that if holy blood is spilled in his village, it's going to bring a curse on all of them. Now, the Islamic elements of this are an anachronism for reasons we'll get to in a minute, but yeah, this element is always present. Now, the Sharifu brothers then always choose as their wife Sogolon Konde, but are unable to consummate the marriage. So they give her to Sunjata's father, and she submits to him. The fourth element that's always present Sunjata's childhood struggles. Right. The other wives are jealous of his mother because she's born a son. So they cast evil spells on him to prevent him from being able to walk. And then he overcomes this through the force of his own will. Yeah, Frank?
Is this possibly based on a true historical king?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Sunjata Kaita is known to have been a real person. The details of his biography, though, are sort of so shrouded in myth that it's hard to see the real person underneath all of it anymore. For example, we don't know for sure when and where he died. We don't know where he's buried. What we know of his biography is taken from these sort of clearly highly fanciful details that we find in the epic. But yeah, he was a real person. And he did unite by force the various ethnic groups in what is now Mali and Guinea. So yeah, this is about a real king.
Sorry, I'm just ringing a bell and realized that.
Sure. Where was I? Right, element 5. rivalry with his half-brother and exile. Right? This always happens in every version of the epic. This always has to happen. And in his absence, the Mandan is conquered by a rival king named Sumaworo. Whom Sunjata must return and defeat. And the final element is Sunjata's conquest of most of West Africa. Right. Once he has defeated his rival and reclaimed his kingdom, he then goes about conquering neighboring kingdoms. Now, the version that we have will end with the seventh element. It won't include this eighth part in which he goes and conquers other territories. The version that's recorded here is slightly unusual in that it was a private performance given by a griot for this particular scholar, right? Who then recorded it and transcribed, transmitted it, right? Okay, so this is what the myth looks like, what the epic looks like in its broad outline. And individual performers will embellish it in various ways. Right? They'll work with these basic elements to create different tales to make different points, often dependent on who's in their audience. Right? Most of the important characters in the epic are regarded as powerful and important ancestors whom you don't want to offend. In particular, if you are speaking in front of an audience that believes themselves to be descended from the villain Sumaworo, you don't want to say too many bad things about Sumaworo, and you don't want to make Sumaworo look weak or stupid, because then you're insulting his descendants, right? So it's rare, for example, for Sumaworo to actually be killed in a version of the epic. Usually he's just driven off. Yeah, Frank.
So instead of the pathetic fool being driven off, he was a mighty warrior that lasted so long against Sunjata.
Sort of. I mean, there's a definite contrast drawn between the two, but you'll be reading that part for next time. So we'll focus on that a little bit more in the next session. But yeah, they're definitely meant to be contrasted with each other. I will say this much: Sunjata is supposed to represent sort of the force of the future, while Sumaworo is associated with the practices of the past. All right. So yeah, secret.
Okay, my last question.
No, go ahead. Ask as many as you want.
For the buffalo woman,
Uh-huh.
confused. Was she actually like the buffalo? Did she change it to the buffalo, or how did that work?
Short answer, yes. Yeah, Dokamisa, the buffalo woman, has the power to transform into a buffalo and rampage about, right? So yes, she is literally transforming into a buffalo and running about killing people in the village. Now, was there anything else that struck you as weird or interesting about that particular episode?
At the end, when she was telling the brothers
Okay.
that she was responsible for all the deaths and
Mhm.
her sister's curse, and how that she would feel really bad she didn't die without her conscience or something.
Yeah, there is a sort of confession of wrongs that she gives to the two brothers. Why does she confide her secrets in these two brothers.
They keep coming back and giving her, like, every time the village will kill a chicken for them, they take parts
Uh-huh.
of her.
Yeah. They treat her with generosity and with kindness, right? And what do they call